There's a federal election coming up on May 3rd, and the biggest question I'm getting asked right now is, who should I vote for? And that's today on The Dr. Jo Show. Before we get into the show, can I just ask you to subscribe to this channel? I know so many of you guys have done that already, but if you're new here, please subscribe. It's really exciting to see the channel growing and our movement growing. And, we've got a big episode planned for today, which is about, with this election coming up, who do you vote for? And this is a hard question because both Albanese and Dutton are not great on abortion. And when you vote, it's not like you're voting necessarily for Dutton or Albanese because you've got local members in your electorate. So in this video today, we're going to specifically be talking about the House of Representatives, because remember, at the federal election, quick explainer, you do two votes. You do a vote for the Senate and then you do a vote for the House of Representatives. And it's the party with the majority in the House of Representatives that form government. That's where Albanese and Dutton are. So today we're going to be thinking about, well, if you're pro-life, who should you vote for? Now, often even well-meaning organisations and individuals get this wrong because it is genuinely confusing. And one of the reasons I decided to do this video is because ACL has introduced or released its Australia Votes website, and they had a section specifically on families, women and children. And on their website, if you go to it, and I'm sure some of you guys have, they asked the parties this question: what initiatives are your party planning to implement to increase the Australian birth rate and to support parents wishing to stay at home and care for their children? Now, it's really interesting, and I didn't actually know that this was the result, but it was brought to my attention because Anushka, who's one of the BirdFlip young ladies, so BirdFlip is a new organisation taking on the abortion establishment, and Anushka is one of the women who's very courageously come forward to do that important work. And she is someone who's had two abortions herself, so this is deeply personal for her. She feels really angry at the way the abortion establishment not just lies to women but funnels them into abortion. And so she really is someone that is just so passionate about the truth. So anyway, it was alerted to me that when she looked at this, she noticed that ACL in their Australia Votes website had given the Greens policy on families, women and children a 3 out of 10. So ACL's analysis says that even though the Greens have generous policies, the push for increased access to abortion undermines real support for families. So they got a 3 out of 10. But then Labor, according to ACL, got an 8 out of 10. And so ACL's verdict says Labor has indicated they are seeking to reduce cost of living pressures. However, cost of living has risen significantly. They have extended paid parental leave to 6 months by 2026 and introduced 3 days a week of subsidised early education for children. ACL score 8 out of 10. Interestingly, the coalition, so Dutton's party, the Liberals, they also get an 8 out of 10 for similar reasons to Labor. And so, if you're you or me and you're thinking, okay, so where do the parties stand on families, women and children, which is the best pro-family party, you're thinking, well, neither of the major parties are ahead of each other. They're equivalent, they're broadly equivalent, and then the Greens are really bad, so we shouldn't vote for the Greens. Anushka very rightly points out when this gets launched, she writes it on Facebook and she says, I've just read through them all and I have to ask why the Greens were given 3 out of 10 and their extreme abortion agenda is mentioned, but Labor got 8 out of 10 under women and children families and no mention at all of abortion. Joshua Rowe, who I have a lot of time for, he's the New South Wales director of the ACL. We have a lot of conversations. I've worked with him to do the first rally against the Radical Greens abortion bill. But Josh gets on and he responds, Anushka Firth, great question, thanks for raising it. The reason for the difference is that we received direct responses from Labor and the Liberals to the family policy question, so we scored them on that basis. The Greens didn't respond, so we had to base our score off their published platform. So first of all, this is just a really stupid methodology. I'm just going to be honest, I'm going to call it. I don't have affiliations with any organisation, and this is not to disparage the good work that ACL regularly does. But this is a really stupid way to work out a rating, a scoring system for a political party on a particular issue. So if your issue is women, families and children, the way that ACL has done this is they've written to each of the parties and they've asked them this question. And the Greens didn't give a response because I guess the Greens just know that, ACL is as far away from them as could possibly be. And so ACL then looks at the Greens policy platform and they can see they're incredibly pro-abortion. They get 3 out of 10. Labor, of course, is too smart to answer that survey for the Australian Christian lobby in a way that highlights abortion. In fact, Labor has been really explicit about this. They lost the 2019 election. One of the main reasons they lost the 2019 election, one of the top 3 reasons, was because of their really pro-abortion policy that they took to the polls, which said that public funding of hospitals has to be contingent upon the provision of abortion, because Labor has a view that abortion is healthcare. They've now scrubbed their policy platform of that so that you can't see that. But nothing has changed about the party itself. And then following the 2019 election, they made a deliberate attempt to manipulate people of faith by reaching out to faith communities. It's clear from the work that they've been doing, the photo ops, Tony Burke getting up at the pulpit. Look at this photo from just the other day where he's getting up at St. Charbel's, giving them $8.5 million, literally from the pulpit. Like, these guys have no shame. And, Michelle Rowland, a senior minister in Labor, saying, we're now going to, we alienated people of faith in 2019. We're going to reach out to them publicly. Like, this is what they do. And so when the Australian Christian lobby sends Labor a survey about how they treat women, families and children, Labor's not going to be like, we're really for abortion. They're just going to highlight the things that they think the Christians would like to hear. And so this is, and that would be the same for the Liberals as well, that if you ask someone a survey of what they are going to do on something, they're going to give you an answer. That's not an arbiter of what's true or not. They're going to give you an answer of what they think you want to hear that will get them a better score. I mean, this is politics. It's high stakes. And so for ACL to have used this methodology, which is essentially the self-serving assertions of a party with a vested interest in a particular outcome, to use that as the method by which you would score a party is just absolutely insane. I mean, the right way to do it, isn't it? It's obvious. You should do it on the record. So you should actually do it based on what the parties have done on that particular issue, and you should look at their policy platform and you should look at the record of what they've actually done. That would be a better way to do this. I mean, this is so absurd. It'd be like if you had an employee and you're doing the performance review, and so you ask the employee, can you just rate how you've done? I've got a question for you. What's your performance been like over the last 12 months? Answer this survey, bring it back. And, maybe that is one thing you would do, like a self-assessment, but it isn't the only thing you would do, because you couldn't have a performance review where the employee says, yep, I've done a really great job. And you go, yep, you're right. You've done a really great job. I agree. Tick, you've said you've done a great job. Therefore, you have done a great job. 10 out of 10. Like, that would be absolutely absurd. And yet that presumably is what ACL has done in this situation. Josh then replies further and he says, so I think the better approach is to score the family policy question on its merits, paid parental leave, childcare support, income splitting, etc. And then just include a footnote acknowledging that all major parties, Greens, Labor, Libs, broadly support abortion laws that ACL strongly opposes. So I'm really concerned about the footnote idea and giving Josh the benefit of the doubt that this was just like a public thought bubble. But abortion, like the killing of babies, like the biggest cause of death, the greatest injustice in Australia, that shouldn't be a footnote, especially not for the organisation that is the peak political body for Christians. Like, abortion is the greatest evil in our society. Like Mother Teresa, when she was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize, she shocked that room of really powerful people because she gave a speech that nobody expected her to give. She stood up and she said, the greatest destroyer of peace today in our society is abortion. And indeed, it is the greatest destroyer of families. It is the greatest destroyer of women and women's health. It's clearly the greatest destroyer of children because it kills them en masse, and without any recourse. So, for the section on women, families and children on the ACL website, like, this is not a Greens website. Like, this is not a Get Up page. This is the ACL page. Abortion can't be a footnote. But the second point is that Josh's comment suggests that he believes and that ACL believes that the 3 major parties are all broadly equivalent on the issue of abortion. And that is grossly misleading voters. Like, that is not actually true. Now, I get that this is confusing. I really do. And I do want to say that, because this is not to criticise ACL and Josh, who I really respect and I believe they do great work. But when there's error and a misguided way, I have to call it out. Like I'm not taking money from these big organizations. I am my own person and I have to do this based on my own conscience. And I honestly tossed and turned about whether to do this video, but I have to do this video because this election is really important. And the reason we keep electing pro-abortion governments is because of guidance like this that gets it wrong. The three major parties aren't broadly equivalent on abortion. Let's talk this through. So it's confusing because abortion up to birth was introduced by both Labor and Liberal governments. It was a Labor government in Victoria in 2008 that first introduced it. And then after Victoria in 2008, it was Labor governments in Queensland, WA and Tasmania that introduced abortion up to birth. But what gets confusing is that in New South Wales and South Australia, in two states, it was Liberal governments, the Berejiklian government in New South Wales and the Marshall government in South Australia. So although more Labor governments introduced abortion up to birth, it was Liberal governments too. So, that's an issue. But then as we're about to do, we're going to drill down to see what really is going on. And you'll see that there's actually some differences. Josh then turns around to Anushka and he says, further to this, Anushka, it's also worth considering that the Greens party are the only party that doesn't have a conscience vote on the issue, which does place them in a category of their own as a platform. Now, that's true that the Greens are the only explicitly pro-abortion party of the three. They take the position of abortion as a party position. You can't vote against it. In fact, Abigail Boyd stood up in the New South Wales Parliament just 2 weeks ago and she said, the Greens will be pro-abortion every single time, in every state, in every vote, in every opportunity. That's how much they love killing babies. That's the Greens. And that's why if you are pro-life, if you are Christian or if you are secular, atheist, but you're against abortion, you can never, ever vote the Greens because of their position on this. It's just so disgusting and appalling. So you can't vote Greens. But then Josh is creating this sort of false equivalence here between Labor and the Liberals because actually there's some key differences. There's some key differences that means you can't say that the two are exactly the same. This is because the outcome of a conscience vote in the Liberal Party versus the Labor Party looks very different. So two things. One, in the Liberal Party, in response to it becoming so bad on abortion, there have been some really strong movements in particular states to bring in a new membership, a new membership of people that are anti-abortion, they are pro-life. And so that's through the leadership of people like Nick Goran in WA and Alex Antic in South Australia. There's clearly a shift to, at a grassroots level, and I know it's happening in New South Wales as well, to get pro-life people into the into the Liberal Party as a way of ensuring that the people that represent the Liberal Party in the Parliament are pro-life. They have a good moral position on abortion. So we know that that's happening at a grassroots level. That's obviously going to affect a conscience vote. If the people who pre-select the Liberal members of Parliament are pro-life, then the Liberal members of Parliament are going to know, well, my job security depends on the pre-selectors, and so therefore I shouldn't be voting against their interests. That's just self-preservation. But then the second and bigger issue is the institutional structure that has existed within the Labor Party since 1996, which is explicitly pro-abortion. Most Australians don't know that in 1996, Emily's List was formed. It's an underground coalition of pro-abortion women within the Labor Party. So it was set up by people like Joan Kirner, Carmen Lawrence, Julia Gillard, the most pro-abortion women in the Labor Party. They set up this thing and its first and only goal at the time was to push abortion. Since then, they've broadened out to 5 other agenda items, but their sole and central purpose is abortion. And in fact, this history of Emily's List, this 25-year history, it clearly says that, abortion has been our flagship fight. This is our central issue. And it traces through how tremendously successful they have been at infiltrating the Labor Party to the present day, that the vast majority of Labor's parliamentarians, they are Emily's Listers. They are people that Emily's List has given money to, has trained politically, has supported to be in Parliament. And so Emily's List has had the biggest influence within the Labor Party to transform it from a place where there were pro-life politicians to a place now where pro-life politicians in Labor are an endangered species. So people will make the point that there are pro-life politicians within the Labor Party, Tony Burke voted against RU486 back in the day in the early 2000s. Claire Scriven exists. Deb O'Neill exists. People can point to this smattering of pro-life individuals within Labor that exist, But the thing is, they are an endangered species. The only reason they are allowed to exist in the first place is so that Labor can trot them out, like they did with Tony Burke this weekend at St Charbel's in Western Sydney, where they know they need the faith-based vote. They trot them out so that they can appear to be more moderate. But when you look at Labor, when you look at the real religion of the Labor Party, let's just think about the fact that it was Chris Minns who was the first premier to ever march in the Mardi Gras, Albanese, the first prime minister to ever march in the Mardi Gras, and this year was at the Mardi Gras when they were making this mocking display of Jesus Christ. It speaks to the real religion of the Labor Party is the woke cult. It's pro-abortion, it's pro-trans ideology, it's all of that stuff, and it's nothing to do with Christians, it's nothing to do with faith-based people, but they keep some of these, people around like Scriven and O'Neill just to make them seem a little bit less extremist. And so Emily's list specifically exists to get pro-abortion women to the parliament. It has transformed the Labor Party to the present day. You'd be hard-pressed to think of a Labor woman on the front bench and in ministerial positions that is not a member of Emily's list. But then we can also see this difference of how a conscience vote plays out between Labor and Liberal on the issue of abortion in an empirical way. There have been 2 votes on abortion in the last 12 months. One was in South Australia, one was in the federal parliament. And in South Australia, there was a debate about the live births bill, which was introduced by a Liberal member of Parliament, Ben Hood. This was a bill that I had a big part in. You guys know this. It banned third trimester abortion. And when there was a conscience vote on that bill, let's look at the outcome. So there were 7 Labor and 1 Liberal who voted to kill babies in the third trimester. They were against the live births bill. So 7 Labor to 1 Liberal. And then against killing babies in the third trimester, so supporting the bill and wanting to see it succeed, there were 5 Liberals and 2 Labor. So that just shows you overwhelmingly that when there was a debate about third trimester abortion in South Australia, it was Labor votes that prevented this from proceeding through the upper house and then to a vote in the lower house. So that is a really key thing that we need to see, because that was about third trimester abortion. The second vote that happened towards the end of last year was around a Greens motion, which wanted to get rid of the Babies Born Alive bill from the federal parliament. So there's a bill before the federal parliament, or there was, that said that if a baby survives their abortion, they should be entitled to an equal right to care. Larissa Waters from the Greens wanted to remove that bill, so it couldn't even be debated. So it was fundamentally anti-democratic, but look at how Labor and Liberal voted on this. So thankfully her motion failed, but that wasn't due to the Labor Party. That was actually due to the Liberal Party and some of the independents, because actually all 11 Greens senators were joined by 17 Labor ones who voted in favour of removing the Babies Born Alive bill from the parliament. But thankfully, those numbers fell short by 2 because there were 23 coalition senators, so that's Liberal and Nationals, 23 coalition senators combined with 7 from minor parties and independents who voted to keep that bill in. So no one from Labor voted to protect the babies in that bill, the babies who survived their abortion, and everyone from Labor who voted with the Greens. So what is the point? What is the point of having Don Farrell and Deb O'Neill, who are our so-called pro-lifers in the Labor Party, if they can't even turn up to vote for the babies? Because there's just presumably so much pressure within the party that they can't do that. They can't vote. They can't vote for these babies who have survived their abortion and are literally tortured by being left to die. I mean, it's just like, it's mind-boggling that ACL could claim that a conscience vote in Labor and Liberal turns out the same way. It really doesn't, and we can see that from the last 2 years. Let's just take a look, first of all, at Labor's record on abortion, just very quickly. So the Albanese government has been the most pro-abortion government of any government we've ever had. They've given $3.6 million of funding to pro-abortion activists. They've passed or changed the policies so that nurses and midwives federally can be turned into abortionists. They give a late-term abortion payment of over $4,000 to a woman who has an abortion. She can get that money. They've rolled out telehealth abortion nationwide and made it a permanent thing. So you can now Zoom your doctor and get the prescription for the pills that will enable you to kill your baby through an unsafe DIY abortion. So these are specific initiatives that Labor has done that have furthered the abortion agenda. Now, I don't think Dutton is great on abortion. I think he's really, really weak. But these are aggressively pro-abortion measures that have happened in the last term of the Albanese government. And ACL's little survey just listened to what Labor told them rather than actually looking at what Labor did. And then finally, when you've got a section on families, women and children, really the key question should be not just which party allows the killing of the most children, but it should also be which party is most supportive of families. And Labor is lockstep with the Greens on this. On the gender equality strategy, which has been like one of the key flagships of Labor, you couldn't get a more anti-family document. This is a document that says Labor's strategy is to fight harmful gender norms of women as caregiving. They are so sold on the woke religion that they are basically, lockstep in line with radical gender studies departments at universities. They believe gender is a social construct and that, when a little girl plays with dolls, that's all because of social engineering. I'm a mum of 5 and I will tell you that there's inherent biological traits that exist between girls and boys. We're different. We're not just different in our reproductive organs, but we are different. And so for Labor to try and do this form of social engineering using our money as part of the gender equality strategy, the other part of this is in that strategy, it talks about women as economic units. We just need to get women back to the workplace as soon as possible after having babies by having universal childcare. I don't believe that that is in the best interest of women. I think it's dangerous social engineering. I think that, yes, childcare should be subsidised, but I think the best place, especially, in those early months and years for a woman is to be close with her children. Like I've had to do both. You guys know I've had 10 babies at the same time while building up my professional career. But, for the government, from an ideological perspective, to be pushing this on Australian women as economic units, you produce your baby, but then you get back to work. Like, this is really dangerous Orwellian stuff that Labor has been doing. Another example is that Labor has just changed the Medicare rebate so that single women, same-sex couples, trans couples can get the Medicare rebate for IVF. So, this article in the Advertiser pointed out how, this trans couple, Max and Paris Rogers, have used IVF to have their baby Windsor, and with this change, Labor's using our money to support this to happen. Now, this isn't in the best interests of children. These are things that the ACL should actually be supporting and advancing, rather than just, producing this website that claims to give Christian voters advice about the most pro-family party, and yet it gives Labor and the Liberals both 8 out of 10. So this is what I would say. I would say if the question is which party is the most pro-family, women and children, the Greens would get a 0 out of 10 because they're just so bad on all of those 3 metrics. Labor would get 2 to 3 out of 10. Libs would get 5 at the most. So the takeaway is that all 3 are terrible. And so if you're voting in the House of Representatives, you're going to have to vote for One Nation or Family First or Australian Christians or the Katter Party. One of those parties, you'll at least get someone that's more pro-family. Now, they're not likely to win your seat, but you're going to have to preference. And the Greens should be last and Labor should be second last when you're preferencing. So all of this to say, I know this video has been a lot, that it is really confusing to know how to vote in the upcoming federal election. Please click on the link down below in the description because I will be sending out a voter guide, a comprehensive voter guide for the upper house and the lower house in the 2 weeks before the election. So as long as you're on this database, you will get that voter guide and that'll give you all of this information in written form. It'll be easier to understand. Now, we are heading into Easter. I'm actually going to take a week's break from next Monday right up until Easter Monday. So I wanted to wish all of you guys a happy Easter. I'm really grateful for you sticking with the show, for you joining it and subscribing and being part of this journey. It's been a really interesting 2 and a bit months, putting together a weekday show. Like it's certainly added dramatically to my workload, but the feedback that I'm getting from you guys and from people is that it is helping, really helping people unpack and process the issue in much more depth. And so I'm glad that it's having some value. Certainly tell me in the comments what you think. I'm really grateful for each of you and the community that we're building here. And I love reading through all your comments. So have a wonderful Easter, and I'll see you back on the Tuesday after Easter. And that's today on the Dr. Jo Show.